Okay, gotta admit, when I picture Jesus, my brain kind of skips ahead. Like, it's baby Jesus manger scene, and then bam, he's turning water into wine at a party.
You're not alone there, really. It's those years in between, the growing up part, that we tend to skim over.
Right. But those years must have shaped who he became. That's what's got me so intrigued about this deep dive. We're going into excerpts from the Untold Story of Jesus.
It's based on the Urantia Book, which I'm sure we'll get into, but the aim here is to flesh out the picture of Jesus, the stuff we don't usually get.
Yeah, give us that behind-the-scenes look. So, to kick things off, one thing that struck me was how much it emphasizes Jesus' normal childhood. No miracles surrounding his birth or anything, just a regular kid in Nazareth.
And that's actually really important, because for Jesus to connect with people later on, for his message to resonate, he needed that shared experience of just being a kid.
Right, like imagine if he'd always been seen as this special, untouchable being from day one.
Exactly. Would people have related to him? Hard to say.
Makes you wonder, what was Jesus like growing up? Was he sneaking extra dates or getting in trouble like a regular kid?
Well, he was human, right.
Totally. And speaking of, the book talks about how his hometown, Nazareth, played a big role too. It was a real melting pot of cultures, which isn't what you'd expect back then.
Yeah, more open-minded than other Jewish communities at the time, particularly when it came to interacting with people from different backgrounds and beliefs.
Ahead of their time, in a way. And get this, there's this story about Jesus as a kid. He sees an amphitheater in Scythopolis, totally blown away by it, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, we need one of these in Nazareth.
I can just picture him, this young, enthusiastic Jesus, pitching the idea to his dad, Joseph.
And Joseph's probably like, hold on, kiddo.
Right, because back then, remember, there was this tension between Greco-Roman culture, all about theaters and public events, and the more conservative Jewish traditions.
Oh, right, Joseph was a devout Jew. An amphitheater might not have been his idea of a good time.
Exactly. He probably saw it as this symbol of paganism, a challenge to their beliefs.
That clash of cultures is fascinating, though. Even as a kid, Jesus is thinking outside the box, trying to bring something new and joyful to his community.
Yeah, and that desire to bring people together, to break down barriers. That's a big theme throughout Jesus' life, even in his childhood.
It's like you see hints of it right there in those early years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're seeing a more relatable side to Jesus, a kid shaped by his time and place. But then there's this other layer, his constant questioning, and we'll get into that right after this break. All right, so we're back, and I gotta say, this next part about Jesus always gets me. The dude was a question machine. Not just your average kid asking, why is the sky blue? This was deep stuff.
It really is something. He wasn't content with the easy answers, was he? He was wrestling with these big, complex questions about God, about faith, about what it all means, and from a young age, too.
Right, challenging the grown-ups, the religious scholars, even his parents. The book mentions this point where he realizes his parents don't have all the answers, and I bet that was a big moment for him.
Oh, absolutely. That realization that even your parents, these all-knowing figures in your life, don't have everything figured out. It's humbling. It probably pushed him even harder to find those truths for himself.
Speaking of pushing himself, there's this story that always blows my mind. Jesus, around 11 years old, gets an invitation. He's invited to study in Jerusalem, the big leagues, right?
Yeah.
With these renowned religious scholars.
You'd think he'd jump at the chance, wouldn't you? A young mind eager to soak up all that knowledge.
Exactly. When he turns it down, chooses to stay put in Nazareth. What do you make of that?
Makes you think, doesn't it? It's like we see this interesting tension in Jesus' life between divine guidance and his own human choice. He's not just blindly following some preordained path.
So he's weighing his options, listening to his gut, maybe even back then.
Huh.
But it makes you wonder, how would things have been different if he'd gone to Jerusalem right then?
Right. Would he have been a different person, shaped by that environment, those scholars? Who knows? But that's part of what makes this whole exploration so fascinating.
No kidding. Okay, so we've got this kid, shaped by his upbringing, grappling with these huge questions, and then things shift. Big time. The book talks about this intense rush of emotions he experiences at the Passover feast, right before his bar mitzvah. Imagine the timing.
It's a turning point, that's for sure. You've got his human development, all the questioning and searching converging with this divine timeline.
And that's when the celestial messenger shows up, right?
Huh.
And suddenly it's not just internal questioning anymore. It's real.
This isn't some vague vision either. It's a powerful confirmation of everything he's been feeling, urging him to get to work, to start what the book calls his father's business.
Whoa. Talk about pressure. He's barely a teenager. And bam, the weight of the world, his purpose, it all lands on his shoulders.
And he doesn't shy away from it either. It's actually during that same trip to Jerusalem that things get really interesting. He stays behind at the temple while his parents head home. They're freaking out, obviously.
Can you imagine losing your kid during a major festival in a crowded city? I'd be a wreck.
Total panic. It reminds you, though, that even as Jesus is stepping into this divine purpose, he's still part of this family unit. Still human.
Totally. Okay, but here's the kicker. He's not just hanging out at the temple. He's in the thick of it, debating with these respected religious scholars.
Hold up, debating. At 12, 13 years old, that's bold.
Right. It takes some serious guts to go toe-to-toe with authority figures like that, especially at that age.
It speaks volumes about how much his confidence was growing even then, and his willingness to question the accepted interpretation of things.
He's not just soaking up information anymore. He's analyzing it, challenging it, becoming, dare I say, a little bit radical.
And that willingness to challenge the status quo, to present a different perspective, that's going to become a big part of who he is later on.
It's almost like we're seeing the early version of Jesus giving those fiery sermons, right? And then when his parents finally find him, the book describes this reunion, and it's almost like he's on a different level now. Totally calm, collected, while they're losing their minds with worry.
It's a powerful image. It's like he's not the kid looking to them for answers anymore. He's stepping into his own understanding of his connection to something bigger.
And then he drops that line, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's essentially like, "Why were you so worried I had to be here in my Father's house?"
Mic drop moment right there. That one sentence, it's layered. You sense the weight of what's to come, the depth of his understanding, and even a little bit of separation from his earthly family.
It's like he's acknowledging his human family, but also stepping into his divine one. And the way the book ends this part, chills, man. It describes Jesus, staff in hand, looking out over Jerusalem as he heads home. And he says, "Get this, O Jerusalem. I will return to cleanse yonder temple and deliver my people from this bondage."
Talk about foreshadowing. He's barely a teenager and he's already declaring his intentions. And it's not just about spiritual cleansing either. He's talking about challenging the very institutions that claim to speak for his father.
Bold move. You could practically feel the ground rumbling beneath those words.
Right. This isn't the meek and mild Jesus some people imagine. This is a Jesus who's ready to shake things up, to overturn the tables, literally and figuratively.
It's like we're left with this image of Jesus on the edge of something huge, something world-changing.
Yeah.
And it makes those stories about his ministry, his teachings, even his miracles, hit differently.
Totally. It's like when you learn the backstory of a character you love, it adds depth. Suddenly you see the humanity behind the divinity.
And that's what's so captivating about this untold story. It's not just about miracles and sermons. It's about a human being grappling with an extraordinary destiny.
And those moments where his divinity shines through, even more powerful because of it.
Because he gets it,
Yeah.
He's been there. Questioned things, doubted, felt that full range of human emotions.
Exactly. And I think that's why his message of love, of compassion, of forgiveness, it resonates so strongly across time and cultures. It's rooted in that shared human experience.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive here, I'm curious, knowing what we know now about Jesus' childhood, his family, this evolving sense of purpose, how does it change how you see him?
Ooh, that's a big one. And honestly, it's a question we could spend a lifetime unpacking. But if anything, it highlights the importance of asking the questions, of digging deeper than the surface level story.
To see the man behind the Messiah.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, in doing that, we discover a little something about ourselves along the way.
Now that's something to ponder. And for everyone listening, if this got your wheels turning, I highly recommend checking out the Untold Story of Jesus yourself. There's so much more to explore. So until next time, keep those questions coming and keep diving deep. It's like we're getting a sneak peek at destiny, this regular kid about to step into something extraordinary. And it makes those stories about his ministry, his teachings, even his miracles, hit a little different when you've walked through those early years with him.
No doubt. It's like the difference between reading a headline and understanding the whole story behind it.
And that's what makes the Untold Story of Jesus so powerful, I think. It's not just about the divine feats. It's about the human journey, the doubts, the growth, the moments of realization.
Absolutely. He wasn't born knowing everything, destined to just go through the motions. He lived, he questioned, he struggled.
He makes those moments where his divinity shines through even more powerful because you're like, wow, he really went through it to get there.
It's that human element that makes him so relatable, even all these centuries later.
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the untold story of Jesus, I gotta ask, knowing what we now know, how has this changed your perception of him?
It's a big question, one that could fuel a lifetime of reflection, honestly. But I think the most important takeaway is the reminder to never stop asking questions, to dig deeper than the surface level of any story.
To see the man, not just the Messiah.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe in that exploration we uncover a little bit more about ourselves along the way.
Now that's a thought to carry with us. And for everyone listening, if this conversation has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to check out The Untold Story of Jesus for yourselves. So much to discover, so much to ponder. Until next time, keep those questions coming and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world.